Hello, everybody. All right. Who's in the midst of budget season? Okay, welcome. Yeah, those are my people. Wonderful. I'm Kat Swetel. I'm the Senior Director of Engineering for the transactional environment at a company called Nubank, and for the mobile platform environment, it's Digital Bank, so the app is important. Yeah, I don't know. You don't care anything else, I don't think. Okay, and this is cost versus stability in a cloud environment. So if you're in budget season, terrific, this is the talk for you. And if you're not, I don't entirely know why you're here, but welcome. Yeah, great to have you here. Okay, first thing, thank you. Okay, thank you for recognizing that this is an important topic, even if it's not the most glamorous one. Okay, so I know there's AI talks and stuff like that. That is much cooler, but this is very important. So I'm thankful that you joined me today. So I'll tell you a little bit about Nubank. Does anyone know who Nubank is? Okay, a few people, right on. Yes, so from the technical perspective, Nubank is a digital bank. We have, depending on how you look at it, somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 closure microservices in our transactional environment. It's something in the neighborhood of 200 deploys a day, which I think is good for a bank. Our canonical database, so backing, I suppose, those services is Datomic. Does anyone know Datomic? Wow, that's an unusually high number. Normally I'm like, do you know Datomic? And people just give me a blank stare. Yeah, so it's basically an append-only database, which certainly does interesting things for cloud costs if you never delete anything ever. And if you want to know more about Datomic, we recently had a Jepsen test, and you can read about it. It's cool. Yes, and I think an important thing to know about Nubank is we were born on AWS just over 10 years ago. So there was no modernization journey from mainframe to microservices. We were just born there. And another thing that will probably be relevant as I go through this talk is that we have a roughly cell-based architecture, probably not in the way that you're used to thinking about it. But we do basically have copies, right? Yeah, anyway, it has cost trade-offs, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Yes, and you might know us from Closure or Datomic, or you might know us because we were featured in Werner Vogel's keynote last year, his whole frugal architect thing, because that's kind of our jam. But most importantly, you might know us because we're the 4th largest financial institution in Latin America, which is cool and a big deal, especially for a digital bank, no branches. We have over 100 million customers and across 3 markets, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia. And I think it's over half of adult Brazilians now are a customer of Nubank. So really important for the economy of Brazil. So no pressure on me, right? Taking care of the transactional environment, yeah. Yes, and this is something, so if you really love an exciting time and you join our earnings calls, you will hear about this. We always report on this, and it is the cost to serve an active customer. And people frequently, they'll be like, oh, how, you kept cost to serve so low despite growing so quickly. So I showed you we've grown very quickly, right? No, that is the wrong framing. I always hear that, but it's the wrong framing. We didn't keep the cost to serve low despite our growth. Keeping cost to serve low is how we grew so quickly. Because of that cost structure, we can afford to fulfill our mission and democratize financial services, offer financial services to people who have been traditionally excluded from financial services. If we didn't have that cost structure, there are some people who are not profitable for traditional banks, right? That's the sad truth of it. But because we're able to do this and operate really efficiently, we can offer financial services to people who might not qualify with other banks. So like I said at the beginning, cloud costs are really important for us in our operating model. They are critically important. We cannot fulfill our mission if we let cloud costs escape. Yes? Makes sense? So that's kind of important framing for the rest of the talk. I'm going to tell you a story of when this became like really, really, really very real. And it starts with this. So in Brazil, there's an instant payment protocol called Pix. Has anyone heard of it before? Okay. Yes. I will explain it to you, presumably a room full of Americans, in terms of what it is not. So it is not Venmo, okay? You transfer money to someone else, and the money just goes directly into their bank account. It doesn't go off into some other place where then you have to transfer it to your bank. It just goes directly into their bank account. It is not Zelle, right? Because then people are always like, well, that's what Zelle does. Because it is mediated by the central bank of Brazil. You don't have to trust like a conglomeration of different banks, right? Everything is mediated by the central bank of Brazil. And also it is entirely free for the people who use it. So if you're a bank and you participate in Pix, you can't charge your customers money to do a Pix transfer. Make sense? Okay, so the Central Bank of Brazil in 2020, they're like, hey, who wants to be part of Pix? Let's go. Maybe in like 6 months or something, let's create brand new payment rails. Woohoo! And we said, yeah, sure, that sounds awesome. Let's go. And then like 3 months into that, they said, hey, surprise latency requirement. Those things happen. So we got that and we're like, oh man, we'll still make it work. Okay, this is awesome. So everyone like rallies and makes it happen. And it was wildly successful. And that sounds great. You're like, oh, cool, you got more people in your ecosystem. Yes, we got a lot of people, okay? Like a serious amount. So this shows, I think, like the first year and a half or something like that of the rollout of Pix. And you see that it very quickly, the number of Pix transactions, which is the purple line at the top, very quickly surpasses the combined total of card transactions. So the transactions through our app now surpass all transactions through plastic, which does some really interesting things to our technical ecosystem, right? Because now, like, when do you use your banking app normally? Like, you might check a balance, something like that, right? If you can't check it right at that second, okay, in a couple minutes you'll check it. You might pay a bill, something like that. But let's be real, like if it takes you a couple extra minutes, you're kind of like, oh, that was mildly inconvenient. But if you are paying for everything, like you're at the grocery store and you're trying to pay and the app is not responsive or something like that, that is a huge problem. And Pix becomes this, like, it's ubiquitous now. Like, for example, I was just in São Paulo and I wanted to like buy a sandwich or something and the street vendor did not accept cash. And that's probably like, you're not supposed to do that. I have no idea. But yeah, they were like Pix or nothing. And I'm American, so I can't have Pix. So huge load on systems that previously were not, it didn't really matter if they were super responsive or not. The other thing is that now we have tons of eyeballs on our app all the time. People are opening the app all the time. And the product people are like, this is terrific, I'm so happy. I'm gonna start putting these other product offerings in front of every person that opens the app. It's gonna be so rad. And suddenly we have all of these products all through one app. We ship one app. All the products are being accessed through this one app, as we're also dealing with exponentially more traffic to the app than we had ever experienced before. So what do you do in that scenario? You throw cash money dollars at the problem, right? Yeah, we've all been there. Don't give me your judgy looks, okay? Because I know every single one of you has done this. Like, what do we do? Should we improve things? No, let's just scale up everything. Scale it all up. Let's go. And that, to a certain degree, is a viable strategy for certain things. Except for this happened. So guess what? Our leaders decided that we should IPO at the same time. And you know what analysts don't like as a coping mechanism? They don't like it when you're just scaling up all of the things, right? They are not fond of that. So we have kind of this perfect storm where we are experiencing all of this new traffic, tons more products. Oh, by the way, please keep the cost low. We need to maintain that cost structure that kind of got us to this point where we can IPO. So then the natural thing that everyone asks, right, is what should we choose? Should we try to optimize cost, or should we try to optimize for stability? Because analysts also do not like it when you suddenly remove financial services from half of all of the adult human beings in a country, right? Like, they're looking for stability in this scenario. So, I'm the gal that has the transactional environment, so everyone is coming to me and like, can't you do something about this? Turn that knob down and turn the other one up. So I'm in this not amazing situation. So first thing, this is not my first rodeo. I believe I know a few things to try. So we do normal things, right? Like, some of these services are doing too much. So let's decompose them, even though they're microservices, right? Some of them are doing more than one thing. Okay, can we decompose them so that only really the capability that needs to be scaled up is scaled up and not all of the capabilities that exist within the service? Does that make sense? So we want to really isolate the scaling, decoupling, right? All of these intuitive things that you're in this room, you already know about them, right? Yes, so I won't talk about them. We also did things across the platform to do with the way that we purchase compute in AWS. So I am not a designer. I don't know if that is clear by now, but I am not. So this slide is hideous, but it serves a purpose. So this is, our Spot, AWS Spot, right, where you buy excess compute capacity from AWS. People know what this is? Yes? Okay. Some people are nodding. Terrific. Savings plans, right? You can commit, I'm going to use this on demand, all this stuff. So this is a date timeline to show you how much Spot we started using and how regularly we used it. This date timeline contains a day that was Black Friday and a World Cup game on the same day. And I would guess that you can't guess which of those days is Black Friday, right? So we essentially got really good at allowing our microservices to tolerate the disruption of Spot, right? You get a 2-minute warning and then poof, your instance goes bye-bye and you gotta relocate things, right? And we run so much Spot every single day for everything across our environment. And guess what? That still was not enough, okay? So then I start looking at things that are perhaps not so intuitive and obvious. And if you thought this talk was boring before, you are in for such a good time now. It's not going to get better. Okay, first thing, garbage collection. Yeah, we're combining budgets and garbage collection, two of just the most scintillating topics. All right, so yeah, we're a closure shop. Closure running in the JVM, right? And we have this thing of canonical approaches consistently applied. So everyone basically at Newbank is using the G1 garbage collector. This should be good, right? It's good for costs. Yeah, less CPU intensive, terrific, great for costs. Until we realized that some of the scaling within our flows was not having a fun time with the long stop the world GC pauses, okay? So what would happen is we get that pause and it causes basically like thrash throughout the flow. And some of the services are like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Scale up. That's how I imagine the microservices talking. I don't know why they have that voice. It's weird. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, we observe that these long stop the world pauses are causing flows to scale up needlessly because it's not demand driven by our customers. It's a pause from garbage collection. So we do something at this point, like, let's be real, I'm grasping at straws, trying to think of things that will make the situation better. So we think, what about using ZGC, the Z garbage collector, okay? Which is more CPU intensive. And you're like, oh, that more CPU is more money, except for when it's not. So with smaller pauses, we don't see a scale up across the flow. So it ends up that, yes, for that service, it looks bad, right? Oh, this service is not that efficient. But if you look over a flow, like all of the services that have to come together to provide something for our customers, the total cost of the flow goes down and the stability goes up. So, spoiler alert, right? Like in this case, I was able to choose both stability and cost. The stable option was the cost-effective option. The next one, all right, so checking all the really exciting boxes, and we're going to talk about caching in Datomic. Woohoo! You couldn't even fake it? No, you can not like a clap or a woohoo or anything? Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm excited too. Thank you. Okay, so Datomic has many layers of caching. I'm not going to cover all of them because you would take a nap before lunch. But it has an in-memory cache, and there's an external cache. And as we're ramping up the transactions, right, more and more transactions are having to go to the external cache. Things take longer. Again, what do you do there, right? Like, it is less performant, and so it's also costing us more money. So, you know, let's do something weird, right? So at first we tried like just beefier machines, right? So that the in-memory cache is bigger. And as it turns out, that was just lighting money on fire. Like, it didn't actually achieve what we were hoping to achieve. So then we got the idea of let's add disks, NVMe disks, which sounds, again, like, yeah, you are just saying light money on fire. Except for that's not all what happened. So then we see way fewer transactions going out to the external cache, because that disk is able, the val cache we call it, right, is way more performant. And again, if you look at this service, I'm spending more money. I'm spending money on disks. But if you look at the flow, I'm spending less money. So what we observed is that for every $1 that we spent on NVMe, so I'm spending one more dollar, we avoided spending $3,500 on scaling, which is a pretty good payoff, right? And now I am not ready to give a talk about this, but gosh, I have a lot more to say on this topic because what we discovered is that through the spot market, we were essentially purchasing compute on these machines that have disks, and we weren't making use of the disks. Well, then you have disks just laying around, and now we found a way to utilize those disks that we would be getting anyway, just because those instances are cheap on the spot market, and we can use them for this cache for Datomic. Hopefully next year I'll be talking about that. But suffice it to say, again, there's a theme here, right? So zoom out for this one service, it doesn't look like that great of a trade-off. But if I zoom out to look at the flow, like how do I provide value to a customer, I'm saving a ton of money in scaling. Does that make sense to anyone in this room? Okay, some people. Terrific, all right. And then the last one is not really a technical change. The last one is a culture change. So at the beginning of this journey, we had a cloud efficiency team, and they did things like design our spot strategy and all that kind of good stuff. And then we started to transition into the era of cloud financial management. And what that transition really was putting the control back in the hands of the business unit. So at Nubank, if you're a business unit with product market fit and you spend pretty much any money on AWS, which is all of our business units, you have a cost champion. You are required to appoint a cost champion, and that person is responsible for knowing your business in your business unit and for knowing about your architecture and all of these things so that that person can help you, an engineer or whomever you might be, make an informed decision about these trade-offs, right? So it used to be that it was kind of all on my team to say to the business units, oh, this is how you operate efficiently. But no one should trust me to make business decisions for all of our products. And that's what it is. When we're deciding how to buy compute, that's a business decision that I definitely should not be making. So we started this change where now we have cloud financial management. We supply tools to the business units, and they kind of make more of the decisions about how they purchase compute. I'm not a paid shill or anything for this company, but the company that we use to achieve a lot of this, the cost observability, is Cloud Zero. And I have looked at many of them, and I do like this one. But whatever works for you. It has lots of cool things, snazzy things that have helped us, like cost anomaly detection, stuff like that. But another cool thing is that I was able to put other tools in Cloud Zero so that I can charge the business units for their spend across a variety of tools. So they're making much better business trade-offs, which is helping to keep the cost of our platform overall low. I'll put a little caveat on there that I do not believe that everything should be charged back to the business units. And the example that I like to give is CI/CD. I don't want the business units trying to save money on CI/CD. That is a recipe for disaster. I would like for you to deploy as much as you want, tiny little change. I would like to encourage that behavior, not inhibit that behavior. So some capabilities we do not charge back to the business units. So we're trying to be mindful of what are the incentives that we are creating. Does anyone, that's okay with people here? Yes? Okay, cool. Yeah, now people are like, yeah, let's clap. Okay, so basically where we ended up is that every engineering decision is a buying decision. Okay, that the CTO of Cloud Zero, he said this last year at reInvent. Anyway, yeah, so this is what we are really trying to help the engineers at Nubank understand, right? And anyone who's responsible for architecture or any of these things, even the like technical product management and all of that kind of stuff, that every engineering decision is a buying decision. And for us, with our operating model, it really, really, really matters that that is part of the decision-making criteria for engineers. So, you know, I believe I alluded to this. When we were looking at the trade-off between cost and stability, what we realized is that in many cases that is an illusion, right? The answer is that stable systems tend to be more cost effective. So in your own lives, I encourage you to push back when you are confronted with this choice and ask if that trade-off is actually real, or if having a stable system also might produce a better cost outcome. And for us at Nubank, we like to say that we are in the era of stable efficiency. And for the reasons I just said, that a stable system also tends to be more cost effective, but it's also more predictable for cost, right? So we do have some things where we are covering some of the spend in savings plans or whatever else. And so if things are predictable, it gives us more like financial ways, right, to optimize our cloud spend, not just engineering ways. So what is next? We have these engineering principles at Nubank, and everyone knows what they are. I'm not going to read all of them for you, but one of them is ownership and technical resilience. And I think, you know, our product landscape has shifted significantly, and now we're looking at the trade-off, if it exists, between cost and resilience, right? People love to tell you that resilience is very, very expensive. And now we're in that place where we're kind of examining that trade-off to see if that is real or not and how we can probe that. The other thing that is very interesting for us is that we do ship one app, right? So a decision that's made by one business unit can have a ripple effect through the other business units in terms of both cost and resilience. So now that we have many, many products and we have this one set of engineering principles, there is some healthy tension there, and I think that's where we're kind of headed next, if I had to guess. That's it.
Thank you so much, Kat. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.